Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to be talking about Ethereum, so if you guys like the content, please subscribe to the channel. Also check out this Telegram channel, which you can find the link to in the description below. We have around 2,200 members, so please check that out. So one of the things with Ethereum that we mentioned back in December was that it appeared that the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio was undervalued, and we would expect, based on past cycles in quarter one, and it's not just that, but it's also the sentiment around the fourth quarter. We would expect to see a decent increase in Ethereum with respect to Bitcoin. Also with respect to US dollar, and we also did see that too. But today we're looking at with respect to Bitcoin. Um, and you can see that we did move up a sizable amount. So from the end of December to uh, the peak that we had in February, the local peak, we went up around 61%. And of course, we've retraced a little bit here, and in lieu of the pandemic that's going on, uh, it's not that surprising to see altcoins in general do this, and also Ethereum. I don't really usually think of Ethereum as an altcoin, but I think of it as an index more or less for altcoins, so that if you're putting all your money in 20 different altcoins and you're constantly losing its equivalent value in Ethereum, then clearly you're doing something wrong. So with what has happened, we can see that we did see that move up with respect to Bitcoin, and we reached a ratio of around 0.028 from an initial starting value of around 0.017. So we did see our quarter one move, and you can see that we've had similar quarter one moves throughout the history of Ethereum. You can see in January of 2016 we saw this move. In January, February of 2017 we saw this move. In January of 2018 we saw this move right here. In early January, February, we saw of 2019, we did see a small move, but it was a move nonetheless. Clearly, this one isn't as impressive as these. And then here in 2020, we also saw a move. Now, one of the things we've talked about before as well is that with when you're looking at the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio, you have to you have to consider when Bitcoin is either above the 20-week moving average or below. And historically, if Bitcoin is below the 20-week moving average, then the rest of the cryptocurrency markets tend to not do so well. So if your main strategy is, say, working between Ethereum and Bitcoin, then just note, and we said this when it happened, when we broke the 20-week, that we would expect the Bitcoin dominance to rise, and for other coins to see drops with respect to Bitcoin, and that has happened. And there's nothing magical about it. It's just that historically Bitcoin has acted when it's above the 20-week moving average, it's more indicative of a bull run, and when we're below it, it's not. And until we hold that level of support, then the sentiment in other coins isn't going to be as high. The confidence is not going to be as high. So, with that said, even if you've held on to, let's say you purchased Ethereum in December with your Bitcoin, and your goal was to, ultimately convert back to Bitcoin. I know a lot of you that's not your goal, but if your goal was to do that, I mean, you could still convert back now, and see a pretty good return if you bought here and sold, so maybe 25% at today. If your goal, however, is just to accumulate Ethereum for the foreseeable future, off into a future bull run, then this is still just business as usual. You were able to hopefully accumulate back in December when we could tell the sentiment was really low, but that the ratio was significantly undervalued. So I just want to point that out. If you look, I don't think the 20-week moving average is as important with other coins as it is with Bitcoin. But it is interesting that, when Ethereum, when the ratio was able to hold above the 20-week, you can see we saw a huge spike in the past. And obviously this could just be a fluke. But it is, we will certainly be watching that level. So the 20-week level is around 0.021 or around that value. So we're right on it as we speak. Um, there's if we wanted to look at the daily chart, you can see that we're right at the 200-day moving average of Ethereum, Bitcoin. So there have been times where this held as some level of support. You can see right here, kind of right here, but ultimately it hasn't really been that indicative of much of anything. So I wouldn't the 200-week or the 200-day moving average of Ethereum Bitcoin I don't think is that significant just based on past patterns. So with that said, clearly the pandemic that's going around the world is certainly driving confidence, some confidence away from cryptocurrency. But at the same time, traditional markets have continued to get pummeled for the last several days, while a lot of cryptocurrencies have pretty much stood their ground. So that is an interesting thing to consider, especially with governments printing so much money. Um, it's nice in a sense that you could have a hedge in cryptocurrency where, you're not just reliant on the fact that the government isn't going to pump trillions of dollars into the economy and thus further devalue, your asset. So, with that said, we've talked a lot about the risk indicator, and you can go check that out in some of my other videos. But one of the things that I would like to note from it is that we've talked about if you're conservative, then buying up to a certain risk level versus moderate versus aggressive. And if you're conservative and say you buy up to a risk of zero point 0.4 and then sell above that, then you would have taken profits in this region. But I would also consider that a more conservative investor because it would have worked out well for you this time. Maybe it'll work out for you well next time. But at some point you might sell and the price will keep going up. And that's just a risk that you have to take. But again, if you dynamically dollar cost average your sells, then it could also be useful because you might only sell a little bit if it gets to that risk level. And then if the risk continues going up, then you continue to sell. And if the risk goes back down, so if the price goes back down, then you take what you sold when the risk goes higher and then reinvest it and accumulate slightly more Ethereum. So I think I was happy to see that we saw this move again with respect to Ethereum, Bitcoin, and we also saw it with respect to US dollar. We went from like around $120 up to 285 or so. So we said expect a 2 to 5x in the first quarter. Turns out it was around 2.5x. So, I mean, I know a lot of times people will say, well, if you can guarantee a 2.5x, then I'll sell it. But then the price gets to that point and then they don't sell. And we said that a few weeks ago. They're like, the price of Ethereum has gone up, over 100% in the last couple months. If you get greedy, then you might lose some of those gains. But again, if your goal is just to increase your Bitcoin position, then even right now you could sell some and move back to Bitcoin until Bitcoin gets above the 20-week. And when it does, I would expect Ethereum then to see some more resumed confidence in Ethereum, because I still ultimately think that Ethereum Bitcoin is undervalued. But at the same time, if Bitcoin is below the 20-week moving average, I would not expect 100, 200% returns in most other coins just because Bitcoin is the market mover. So I would say that just continue to watch Bitcoin in terms of where you think Ethereum is going to go. If Bitcoin remains below the 20-week moving average, I would not expect a significant movement with Ethereum. But I hope this has been informative to everyone. I mean, sometimes I just have to make videos to give updates, even if there's not a whole lot. I think right now we're more or less just waiting for to figure out what's going on with this coronavirus and to see how it's going to continue to affect markets. because if it is, then people again tend to liquidate high risk assets when they're scrambling to pay their rent because all of their other investments are down. So I hope this is informative. If you want to talk about this stuff more, check out the Telegram channel. If you want to learn more about the risk indicator, you can also check out the Telegram channel. I also have a Patreon subscription service where I'll do updates to the risk indicator and try to guide you in terms of historically what the risk level is compared to what you could be buying it for at say the current risk level versus historical risk levels. So the whole idea is to get, ultimately the whole idea is to accumulate as much Ethereum as we can during this time. And we've said over and over that 2019 and 2020 are the years to accumulate. And we've also said many times that we believe in the lengthening cycle theory, that we're not going to see a peak in 2021, but it'll likely be another, 1, maybe 2, maybe even 3 years after, because the data suggests that the cycles are lengthening. So if the cycles are lengthening, then the cycle would also certainly be lengthening for Ethereum if it's lengthening for Bitcoin. And if you can imagine, if the next peak is say out in even say 2023 or something, then what we're doing right now is we're just playing in the sandbox in a sense, trying to accumulate as much Ethereum as possible for the lowest price possible. So if you can continue to pick Ethereum up at low prices and at low risk levels, and you have this macro level view that we might go down in the short term, but in 2023, I'm not going to really care what the price of Ethereum was in March of 2020. I'm just going to be, assuming we have another bull run, I'm just going to be happy that I was buying at anywhere in this region. I think that's how most people will likely feel, and we do have a long road ahead. We have a very long road ahead, many years, I think, of accumulating. First, Bitcoin needs to get above the 20-week, and then Bitcoin needs to get to a previous all-time high, both of which I think will continue to spur positive movements of Ethereum, not only with respect to Bitcoin, but with respect to the US dollar. And then also, we would finally expect a nice move with Ethereum if Bitcoin were to, say, get to an end of a future bull run. And then at that point, people are essentially playing with monopoly money, and altcoins tend to have their day. And again, I try not to lump Ethereum in as an altcoin because I don't really consider it an altcoin. But for the sake of purpose, we're just saying, Bitcoin is the main market mover, and the other coins are essentially waiting to see what Bitcoin does. So keep an eye out for the 20-week moving average for Bitcoin. Keep an eye out for Bitcoin reaching a previous all-time high of $20,000. And then obviously we'll follow Bitcoin throughout the years to see what the risk level is, and if the risk level gets to say 0.9, then I will be pulling out my Bitcoin holding, probably taking out 90% of it and just putting it, storing it away, and then maybe taking the other 10% and trying to find some last profits in coins like Ethereum. And Ethereum is the coin, that one of the coins that I'm most bullish on. I mean, there's the most developers, and it really does have a great community and a growing community. And I think that the chart of Ethereum has also held up much, much better than many other coins. Because if you were to look from September 2019 to present day for most coins with respect to Bitcoin, I can guarantee you that most of them are not up 25%. Most of them are going to be down. So take that for what it's worth. Ethereum, I think, is still doing well considering the global circumstances. So I hope you guys liked the video. Again, please subscribe to the channel. Check out the Telegram channel, and if you want, check out the Patreon channel in the description below, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.